Welcome to the WNP Fantasy Football League Week 1 recap. This is your host, the Commissioner, Tony Rignola. Let's go ahead and dive into last week's matchups. Curtis and Isaac squared off. Curtis was favored by 30 points and won by way more than 30 points by the score of 130-77 from Isaac. Let's talk about the positive in Curtis's team. Aaron Rodgers threw for 189 yards on 18 of 23 with 3 touchdowns for 43 fantasy points. Randall Cobb had 14 fantasy points. Giovanni Bernard, Tar Heel, had 13 points on 63 yards on the ground, 6 catches for 25 yards. And Curtis on the bench had 53 points from Marcus Mariota on 13 of 16 passing for 209 yards and 4 touchdown passes, which didn't matter, obviously, because he's got Aaron Rodgers, and the only time he's going to start Mariota should be during Aaron Rodgers' bye week. With that being said, let's talk about Isaac's 77 points, which really there's not much to talk about. Andrew Luck wasn't so lucky. 27 points on 26 of 49 passing for 243 yards, 2 touchdowns and 2 picks. I don't expect that too often this season. Eddie Lacy had a good game for 15 points, 85 yards on the ground, and a touchdown. Isaac must have not been paying too much of attention to the inactive list, because he did start Mike Evans, which was inactive, which is completely unlike Isaac. Nelson Aguilar and Eddie Royal also not inactive, but also threw up 0 points along with Mike Evans. So that's 3 starters for Isaac's team that had 0 points. A bright spot is his bench points. Carlos Hyde, 34 points on the bench. Rushed for 168 yards, 2 touchdowns. My guess is he'll be starting this coming week. All but Steve-O, Petey, and Josh's teams was outscored by every other team's bench. Outscored Isaac's starters. Just so you know. But anyway, that was that game. Let's move on to Steve-O and Petey's matchup. Steve-O was favored by 9 points in this and lost 133-102. We'll go to Petey's team first. Sam Bradford, 40 points on 36 of 52 passing for 336 yards, a touchdown and 2 picks. Marshawn Lynch had 17 points. DeAndre Hopkins was a big surprise for Pete with 28 points, 9 catches for 98 yards and 2 touchdowns. Jason Witten had 23 points on 8 catches for 60 yards and 2 touchdowns. And that Homer defense, Homer as in the Eagles deal, 6 points. Didn't bother you this week, Petey, but you might want to check next week. Steve-O drafted Russell Wilson with his first overall pick, which was the number 3 overall pick in the draft, and benched him for Old Man Manning. Peyton, 14 points, 24 of 40, 175 yards, 0 touchdowns, 1 interception. I don't know the stats, but that's got to be Peyton's worst season opener of his career. And Russell Wilson on your bench, Steve-O, had 42 points. Even with the math being done there, you're still looking at a 133-130 loss. But something to consider for next week, Steve-O, starting Russell Wilson and not Peyton Manning. A bright spot, Darren Sproles had 19 points on 50 yards rushing, 7 catches for 76 yards. Greg Olsen, C.J. Anderson, Malcolm Floyd, combined 6 points. Gonna need more productivity out of them. The next matchup, last year's winner, Don, versus last year's sucko loser, Josh. Josh was favored by 7.3 points in this matchup. Lost by 27. It was a good effort on both parts. Let's go to Don. Big Ben, 39 points on 26 of 38 passing for 351 yards, a touchdown and a pick. D'Angelo Williams had 17 points on 127 yards. Antonio Brown Antonio Brown with 29 points, 9 catches, 133 yards, and a touchdown. Martellus Bennett, 16 points, 5 catches, 55 yards, and a touchdown. Jarvis Landry, 24 points on 8 catches, 53 yards, a touchdown, which was on the punt return, so you got the yardage for the punt return as well. Seahawks defense, 32 points, 2 touchdowns, 3 fumble recoveries, 2 sacks. Don, I mean, there's not a weak spot on your team. Your starter scored 177 points. Your bench scored 194 points. So let's go ahead and give it up to Don for being already the clear-cut favorite to repeat as the PD winner. Josh, 150 points, not bad. Matt Ryan, 34 on 23 of 34 passing for 298 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 picks. Chris Ivory, 21 points on 91 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns. Julian Edelman, 19 points on 11 catches for 97 yards. Jimmy Graham, 16 points. Good for a tight end, but not necessarily in week 1 where we had a few guys that got over 30 on 6 catches for 51 yards and a touchdown. Jets D came through with 25 points. They did play Cleveland. Terrence Williams, 11 points on 5 catches for 60 yards. Look for his numbers to improve now that Des Bryant broke his foot. Adrian Peterson, not Adrian Peterson, 5 points, 31 yards. I don't expect that too often. Let's go to Josh's second round pick, Alfred Blue, 42 yards for 4 points. Looking like you're going to need more productivity out of him. Let's see. Let's go ahead and move on to Patty and Brian's matchup. Brian was favored by 8.1 points. Won by 14. 176 to 162. Like Don and Josh's matchup, can't be mad with the points that you scored. Just got to be a little pissed off that your opponent scored a little bit more than you did. So let's go to the winning team, Brian, talk about his players. Drew Brees, 35 points, 30 of 48, 355 yards passing, a touchdown, and a pick. Alfred Morris, 17 points on 121 yards. Panthers defense came through, 32 points, a touchdown, 2 interceptions, 1 fumble recovery, and 5 sacks. Didn't matter this week, Brian, that on your bench you had 3 studs. Keenan Allen, 36 points. Percy Harvin, 27 points. Tavon Austin, 21 points. But like I said, didn't matter this week. Let's talk about one key pickup that Brian did do on the Sunday of the games. Waiver wire pickup. Tyler Eifert, tight end, Cincinnati. Killed it. 32 points, 9 catches, 104 yards, 2 touchdowns. Ladies and gentlemen, that right there is the deciding factor of Brian winning this matchup versus Patty. Patty, Rams defense, 33 points. Touchdown, interception, 6 sacks. Matthew Stafford, 28 points on 19 of 30 for passing. 246 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Jamal Charles, 20 points on 57 yards on the ground, 5 catches and 46 yards and a touchdown through the air. Jordan Matthews, 25 points on 10 catches for 102 yards. Robbie Gould, the Chicago kicker, 17 points on 3 of 3 field goals, 2 of 2 extra points. What cost Patty the game was starting Matthew Stafford over Tony Romo. Tony Romo on your bench, 60 points, 36 of 45, 356 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 picks. You start Tony Romo, you're looking at a 1-0 start. as opposed to an 0-1 start. And finally, the matchup between myself and Dean. Dean was favored by 30.3. Had a 95-0 lead after Thursday's game. Ended up winning by the score of 166-163. Dean, Tom Brady, 56 points on 25 of 32 passing, 288 yards, 4 touchdown passes, 0 picks. Gronk, 32 points, monster, 5 catches, 94 yards, 3 touchdown passes that he caught. Julio Jones, 36 points on 9 catches for 141 yards with 2 touchdowns. Most of that was in the first half of the Monday night game. I really should have got beat by more than 3 points had they thrown the ball more to Julio Jones. Mike Wallace actually was a deciding factor because after the first Monday night game, I still had like a 12-point lead on you, was still projected to win. Obviously, that didn't happen because Mike Wallace chimed in with 11 points on 6 catches for 63 yards. One spot on your bench, Dean. Kendall Wright, 30 points, 4 catches for 101 yards and a touchdown. A few bright spots about my team. Tannehill had an okay game, 25 points, 22 of 34 passing, 226 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions. Matt Forte was a monster, 32 points on 141 yards on the ground, 5 catches with 25 yards. Travis Kelce hooked me up with 36 points on 6 catches for 106 yards and 2 touchdowns. The Chiefs D hooked it up with 24 points. My bench, I had a bench kicker, had 21 points with Matt Bryant, 4 for 4 field goals, 2 for 2 extra points. But honestly, I started Mason Crosby, Green Bay kicker instead. We all would have. What hurt me on Monday night is the fact that Torrey Smith in the game, the second Monday night game, only got me 1 catch for 11 yards for 1 point. And so Mike Wallace outplayed him for 11 points. Right there, ball game. Hats off to you, Dean. We got some interesting matchups going on for this upcoming week. I know we definitely have a couple of winless teams going at it, which would be myself going up against Isaac. And we're both trying to avoid the dreaded 0-2 start. So we'll see who can get off the blocks quicker and get the W. We've got Don versus Patty, Dean versus Steve, Brian versus Pete, and Josh versus Curtis. Wish you guys all luck. Stay on them waiver wires. And good luck, everybody. Week 1 is a wrap. Thanks for tuning in.